William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
I see Gary Thomas is here, and Dart, they have a presentation for us on the D2 line progress.
Thank you, Judge and Commissioners. My name is Gary Thomas. I'm the President, Executive Director of Dallas Area Rapid Transit. And I appreciate you spending just a few moments on your very busy agenda today to allow us to talk about D2, or the second alignment in downtown Dallas of our light rail system. It's a project that we've been working on for some time now. We've had very engaging public meetings. A lot of involvement, a lot of help as we've worked through where that alignment ought to be and how it ought to work. And so today what I'd like to do is allow Steve Salin, our Vice President of Capital Planning, to give you just a brief presentation of where we are, what we're doing, what we're talking about. And certainly the county staff has been very engaged as we've gone through this process, and we appreciate you allowing them to do that too. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Steve, and then be happy to answer any questions after that.
Thank you. Thank you, and again, thank you for the time this morning. This presentation is about 15 slides out of a deck of about 120. So it will be very brief, and happy to come back, answer any questions that you may have, or brief you individually on the project. The other thing I want to highlight is that out of the presentation, I'm going to be primarily focused on this end of town. I will talk about the entire project, but primarily focus on this end of town. So first slide is what is D2. Gary gave you a quick highlight of it, but there are three key phrases that I'd like you to take away from this. One is it is all about core capacity. We are trying to expand the ability of our system to handle more trains, more people, more riders coming through the downtown. As you know, we run on a single track mall today, and anytime there's an event that stops traffic on the train tracks itself, we don't have any way to get by it. So that brings us to the second point, which is operational flexibility. The second alignment, as we are planning it, would allow for trains to bypass the mall and go down a new alignment that would bypass whatever incident was occurring. In addition to that, it just provides for additional mobility and access. That by putting in the second alignment, we open up new areas within the Central Business District for additional stations, but also as we are expanding the streetcar system with the City of Dallas, again, opens up more within the Central Business District for ridership. One thing to note that we are seeking federal funds for a portion of the project, approximately 50% capital investment grant funding out of a core capacity program, which fits very nicely with the type of project that we are trying to advance. This map is certainly dated, but I take you back to where we were a year ago. This was the preferred alternative adopted by both the City of Dallas as well as the DART board, and it was a partial tunnel and partial at-grade alignment going through downtown. About last year, after we've been working on it, the City of Dallas decided that a subway, based on public involvement and involvement from a number of residents and business interests, said that really the alignment ought to go into a full tunnel. And so that's what we've been working on for roughly the last 6 months, is to come up with an alignment that would reflect a tunnel. And so this is the language in part out of the resolution that says that between Woodall Rogers and 345, it needs to be in a tunnel as best as possible. In addition to that, the DART board set a budget for the project of approximately $1.3 billion. And as I say, we're seeking 50% of that funding from the Federal Transit Administration. Now, this is a quick highlight of the schedule. We are here, we're at the end of March, if you will. You'll see the yellow dot that shows up at the end of May. That is our target where we'd like to take the universe of alternatives, all of the good ideas, if you will, and narrow it down to a single alternative so that I can submit it to FTA by September. We are on track. We are going to hold a meeting tomorrow. I'll talk about that in a moment, but we are moving per the schedule. This is the range of alternatives that have been identified or where we are today. There were many more lines on the map a few weeks ago. For reference, this is the railroad track. This is Woodall-Rogers. What you see right here is the existing mall through downtown, Union Station down here, and we are right here. So one of the things that we'd like to highlight in this range of alternatives that was defined is that there are some technical limitations as to how you construct a tunnel, especially in a central business district, and I will highlight those. First off is in the West End, we are going to be looking at a range of tunneling techniques, and it's all determined based on the geology that exists below the surface. I'll have a map here in a moment, but there is good tunneling material and there is really lousy tunneling material, and I'll highlight where those things are. In addition to that, we're very sensitive to Dealey Plaza, Sixth Floor Museum, and the things that are at this end of town and their significance, and we want to make sure that we account for those as we advance the alternatives. This is that map I referenced a second ago where you see it in green. That is Austin chalk material. That is very good tunneling material. What you see in the light brown shade, the tan, is clay soils. It is not very good for tunneling. Doesn't mean you can't tunnel in it. It just requires a different type of machinery and it requires a different approach to that. One of the things that you'll note based on those alignments that I showed a second ago, if they start in the railroad corridor, they would start in the worst tunneling material and then transition into the good tunneling material. But what that means is that because the material in the railroad corridor is the worst, that sets the base for the type of material and tunneling approach that we would have to take. So it does create a little bit of a problem. The line that you see that separates the two is roughly Lamar. So it runs along a little shelf. And again, this is the alluvial soil deposits from the Trinity River over many millions of years from times gone by. I wasn't around at the time, but that's what they tell me. These are two maps that start to focus in on the specific issues and concerns that we would like to make you aware of. First and foremost is what you see in the blue is the existing mall, so coming from Union Station up the mall or coming from America Airlines Center and coming up the existing mall. Several ideas that have been proposed are shown in the red illustrations. So coming off of the existing railroad corridor, starting into a tunnel underneath Woodall-Rogers, being underground and coming across Dealey Plaza and then getting onto Elm Street. Another option is to continue straight underneath the Y and getting onto Elm Street. What you see in the green shade tone is Dealey Plaza, the historic landmark designation for the JFK Memorial site. We think that that is a significant undertaking and as a substantial risk, although there are a number of stakeholders who are advocating for this particular alignment. We don't think that it is a prudent alternative, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. What makes it even more complicated is that although a tunnel boring machine can handle this curve, a tunnel boring machine cannot handle this curve. And that means that we would have to do cut and cover. And for those of you who are familiar with cut and cover, that means scraping the surface, digging down. And as you're nodding your heads, that's right in the middle of Dealey Plaza. I'll leave it at that for the moment. But we looked at another alternative that would swing the alignment a little bit further off to the west before we came through Dealey Plaza. Again, this would be a cut and cover section. We are not advocating for that at all. So we think that is a significant flaw to the alignments. That being said, We've also received input from a number of entities, Sixth Floor Museum, and we just received a letter yesterday from Preservation Dallas that also discourages that particular alignment. I won't go into this detail, but these are certainly the federal laws that I'm most concerned about that would certainly affect any alignment in this vicinity. We've had letters of support for what we call the Victory alignment, which would eliminate the need for us to go through Dealey Plaza. So DART owns this right-of-way as a part of the American Airlines Center Victory Development. We branch off of just south of the Victory Station. This is the Perot Museum. There would be a brand new station located there, cross underneath Woodall Rogers, and this is where we would start the tunnel. It would continue on down roughly Griffin Street, and I'll show that here in a second in a little bit more detail. What that does is it takes us out of the railroad corridor, takes us away from the historic resources of Dealey Plaza. And so what you wind up with is a range of alternatives where you saw a minute ago alternatives associated with the railroad corridor. We would advocate for an alignment that comes this direction and uses either Commerce, Elm, or Pacific going out and tying into the east end of town by the what is now the Good Latimer Deep Ellum Station. There is another alternative that has been suggested, which uses Ross and then comes across. We don't think that alignment will necessarily survive the review process. Primarily, it doesn't solve the core capacity issues. It doesn't meet the FTA criteria. So what we have tomorrow at 3:30, the county staff is participating in the meeting, is a review of all these alternatives and kind of where we stand relative to the ranking and rating of the alternatives. So what I'd like to leave you with is that we would love to receive a letter from the Commissioner's Court that says that it would indicate your understanding of the significance of the issue and that you too probably don't think that going through Dealey Plaza and cut and cover approach would make a lot of sense. Certainly love to hear a positive reinforcement of support for the D2 project. We'd like to have a letter by the May deadline, and if necessary, we'd also like you to consider a resolution at a later date in terms of how the support goes for the particular project and alignments that are identified. So I will leave it there. Glad to take any questions that you may have, and also indicate again that I'm happy to come back and brief you on this in more detail.
I recommend that you work on a letter with Mr. Bazan, and he'll present that to us, and we'll take a look at putting it on an agenda.
Glad to do so.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
It's good to see Gary Thomas and you, Mr. Salam, again. And I think that, I want to thank Mr. Bazan for working with you and bringing this presentation. And first and foremost, thank you for bringing us the short version. I read the long one, and trust me, it took me a long time. But I think, for what you just say, it's clear. Too bad on this side we have the lousy, ground and, tunnel options. Definitely, we need to be sure as a Commissioner's Court, just for the success of the program and the mission that DART has in capacity and core, the D2 option probably will be the one. And, more importantly, the laws, and including the transportation, Section 4, is very clear. So we definitely, will be working with you in eliminating all those components that will not be acceptable too close to this area because of the soil composition as well.
I would just like to say, too, that I don't envy your position of having to find the ideal route through historical buildings and established businesses and religious institutions and narrow roads and bad ground to have to tunnel through and all the other decisions to be made. But I think that everybody here, we all know that the transportation issues have to be addressed because of just the issues of downtown Dallas and right. Figuring out a way to work through it. So anything that we can do, obviously, to help in some of those, we, of course, will be doing. So I look forward to seeing the letters or whoever else we can do to support the efforts for better transportation.
Thank you.
methods.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pete.
Thank you. It's great to see you all.
We've got on our agenda.
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.